Come with me 2,000 years ago to Israel, to a place called the Sea of Galilee. Crossing over are Jesus and his 12 followers. Jesus has been with the crowds all day and he has become exhausted, so he goes to the bottom of the boat. He falls asleep. The disciples, as they continue to cross over, find that suddenly a storm is raging all around them. The waves are coming up into the boat. The wind is fierce. The disciples, don't forget, many of them were fishermen. They become afraid for their lives. They run to where Jesus is, and they find their miracle-working Lord fast asleep. So in panic, they wake him up and they say to him, "Do you not care if we die?" The fear of death had gripped them. It's a problem that all of us, without exception, experience. 8,000 people. 8,000 people were recorded yesterday to have passed away because of the coronavirus. 8,000 people in the UK alone. You just need to go out and you will see that people have been gripped by the fear of death. You see, the Bible goes further. The Bible says, actually, the fear of death enslaves us. It enslaves us by a much greater power than death itself, the devil. The devil has convinced the world that he doesn't exist, but the Bible is emphatic he does. And he uses the fear of death to enslave us, to keep us away from the life-giving God. He is known as the slanderer, the accuser, which means, in effect, he does what his name is. He comes and whispers in your ear and tells you why, on the day of judgment, as you stand before God, you will be completely unworthy. So just forget about it, he says. Just put your head into the world. Just bury your ears in entertainment. Fill your time with things where you don't think about God, where you don't think about your mortality, and you don't think about the life afterwards. Just forget about it. He enslaves us with the fear of death. But the good news is that Easter is all about the death of fear. Who was that man, Jesus? The Bible says Jesus was God become human, who had entered this world, not standing far off, not ignoring our cries of distress, not looking at the brokenness of our lives and our world and being completely unfeeling towards them. No, the God who created everything became a man. He took a human name, and Jesus was even tempted, just as we are, to rebel against God, to do things wrong, to sin by the devil. The difference is, he resisted. Even his own siblings claimed that Jesus was without sin, claimed my siblings would never make about me. And Jesus, when he was, even in the last few hours of his life, standing before many judges, there were people who came along who accused Jesus as though they had been influenced by a spiritual power of the devil behind them, and they were uttering all sorts of accusations against him, but not one of them stuck. Jesus was faultless. Jesus was blameless. Jesus was always pleasing to God. Jesus was sinless, unlike you and me. The Bible says the wages of sin is death. Jesus was in no way deserving of death. And yet, he willingly chose to die. Now, if you don't believe that on Good Friday Jesus willingly chose to die, then listen to the words of Jesus himself. In front of his judge, Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor, Jesus said to him, "You would have no authority if it had not been given to you." Jesus knew that the events at the cross was not a God plan gone wrong, but in fact it was completely the opposite. It was God's plan, and Jesus was going by it, point by point. And so Jesus, he gave himself to die on a cross, the innocent for the guilty, the righteous for the unrighteous, the good for the bad. And there on the cross, he died the death that you and I deserve. He took our wages on himself. And so there at the cross, Jesus not only brings forgiveness of sin, but he breaks the power of Satan and he destroys the fear of death to all those who would trust in his sacrifice there at the cross. So come back with me to the Sea of Galilee, where Jesus and the disciples are in a storm and the disciples are fearful for their lives. Jesus, he gets up, he turns to the wind and the wave and he speaks to them as though he's their creator. And he says, "Peace, be still." And astonishingly, that's exactly what happens. Creation stops at his command. Who is he? He's God in the flesh. But then he turns to his disciples and he says to them, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" So the question I want to leave you with, why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?